Welcome back, everyone, to Confessions of a Loveaholic. I am your host, Emmy Hernandez, and I have a very special guest with me today. Her name is Melissa Z. White. And let me tell you about the credentials of this woman. Holy smokes, I am so beyond impressed. And she's going to be going into some yummy nitty-gritty about relationships. Melissa Z. White is a personal power expert, surgical neurophysiologist, and neurodiagnostic professional. She's a certified hypnotherapist, NLP practitioner, and certified holistic life and health coach. She holds advanced degrees in psychology and neurophysiology and has over 25 years specified experience in the medical, addiction, treatment, mental health, social services, corporate, and entrepreneurial industries. Her uncommon background, education, and experience provides a unique perspective and understanding of the brain, human behavior, and the link between mentality, physicality, and achievement. Ooh, we love talking about the brain here. I'm big brain nerds. Woohoo! Yay! Melissa currently works with individuals all over the globe to identify, embrace, and wield their unique personal power to elevate all areas of their life to limitless heights. Melissa, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Emmy. Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
I'm excited that you said yes to our invitation. And we want to start off with the basics. What is neurophysiology? And I know that that may or may not be a part of the rest of what we talk about, but I'm just so enamored with, I'm just surprised I can even say the word. So let's start there, Melissa.
Sure. Neurophysiology is essentially the study of the functioning of the neurological system. So much like, we have anatomy, we understand all of the physical links. Neurophysiology is looking at the function and how those links interact. So it's the brain talking to the spinal cord, talking to the rest of the body, and how it affects everything that you do, every part of your life.
I love that. That is so cool that you studied that and you studied this from the medical perspective. I've studied it from like the energetic and a little bit on the medical side, but I am not a medical expert. I never want to be. So I love that we have you as a brain medical expert here, because we're going to go into some nitty gritty about some truths around relationships, because that's what we want to focus on here, right? So as for those of you listening who are recovering loveaholics, right? Learning about blueprints, learning about how your brain can be addicted to toxic love. Miss White here is going to be going into some of the keys of how we get into potentially some dangerous situations. And also the flip of that is, how about we start here, Melissa? What is the key to creating a successful, healthy relationship?
I think the very first part of finding the key to creating a healthy relationship is first creating your own healthy identity. I think everything in our life starts with us, right? And if we aren't healthy, if we aren't centered in who we are, in what we want, in our own integrity and how we function, both within ourselves and then in the larger community, right? Then if we don't have a center for that and we're not functioning cleanly and clearly in that space, then it's hard to create anything around us that's going to be successful and healthy. So this can go to your career, this can go to your finances, this can go to your health. And of course, it's going to impact your relationships. It starts with the relationship with yourself. And then that is how we move through the dynamics of interpersonal relationships and ultimately our intimate relationships.
100% agree. I always tell my clients that when they come to me, they come into my world thinking, oh, Emmy's going to help me find my soulmate, find my soulmate, find my soulmate. And yes, I will, but we don't start there. We don't start with trying to match you up with an intimate partner, because we need to learn how to be intimate with ourselves. And I mean that in all senses.
100%.
Right? And on that note, around identity, Melissa, I think it's just so powerful to discuss this, and it is a point that a lot of people miss, including myself in my early 20s. And it took a while for me to really truly understand what it meant to work with the law of attraction, like attracts like. Like I had to be in a space of personal power myself in order to attract someone that was in the space of personal power, in order for us to be able to co-create a life together versus filling a void. And this is your area of expertise in helping people tap into this personal power and talking about identity. And I feel like for so many people, it's so confusing. Like, what does that mean? What is the concept of identity? What is personal power? So how does someone begin to start their journey of them identifying and how to tap into their own personal power? And what does that mean? What does it look like?
Right. That's a great question. I think so often, we wonder, where should I start? How do I start? Right. We find ourselves usually at that point of questioning that when we've already gone through some trials and tribulations, and we find that we're in a place, right, that we're not satisfied. And so then we start looking at it and go, well, I'm not really happy with this. Why am I not happy? And what do I do now? How do I find my way to that satisfaction that I'm looking for? And so I think the best place to start is really like understanding that that is completely normal. And the fact that you are realizing that you aren't exactly in the space that you want to be is the key starting point. It means that you recognize that you're worth more, that you have more value, you deserve more, right? It's sort of the whispers of your inner soul going, hey, I'm meant for more. Now let me figure out how to go find it, right? And so when I work with my clients, a big part of that how is let's take an inventory. Let's figure out, who are you at this time in your life? Because a lot of times we hold these narratives from past versions of ourselves or false narratives of who other people have told us, especially when coming out of a toxic relationship. A lot of times when people are in relationships with toxic individuals, they've been belittled, they've been beat down, they have these mental stories that have been repeating over and over in their dynamics and in their dialogue, and they begin to believe it. So we have to start with uncovering the truth. Who are we in this moment, in this time in our life? And we have to understand that it's probably evolved over the years, and that's great. And now, where do we want to take it? So who are we? What do we envision that we really want? How do we want to show up? Who do we want to be? And then going ahead and looking at our past and learning from it. What patterns can we extract, whether they were healthy or not healthy? All of that information is basically a giant database that we can look at and go, what works, what doesn't? And when we learn that, we sort of learn how to better navigate. It's like when you're driving and you make a wrong turn and you're like, I'm not going in the direction I want to go. Okay, well, what do I need to do to course correct? It's pretty much that simple. It's the same thing in our own life. And in creating healthy relationships, it's the same thing. We probably have gotten to the point where we want to create a healthy relationship because we've been through ones that haven't been so healthy. And we know what that feels like. And we know we don't want to go back to that. And so it's just our own, self-preservation to want to create something better. So using all of our data, not being afraid to look at it, the ugly parts, the good parts, all of it, it has value in helping us to figure out how to move forward.
You're so right. I definitely did not start this journey because everything was going phenomenally well. It started because it was chaos. And for those of you listening, yeah, you're in the right place. You're in the right place. You're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. But the fact that we can recognize, like, hey, this doesn't feel good. You're starting to recognize, like you said, I love that you mentioned and that you shared it this way of like the inner whispers of your soul. Oh, that's yummy. I love that. It is the inner whispers of our soul of like, hey, this doesn't feel good in my body. Like there has to be something better. And even if we feel like we're stuck in a certain situation, you are starting that journey of like wanting to break free of your current environment. And I love what you said about when we're driving down the road and we make a quote unquote wrong turn. I'm putting that in quotations because I truly believe that anytime we make a wrong turn or exit in the wrong place, it's never the wrong one. It was a redirection. I truly, firmly believe that it was protection from God, protection from the universe. I have to believe that. And here's why. Because if I don't believe that, then I'm going to beat myself up 24/7 because I made the wrong turn or I took the wrong exit, and then judgment takes place. Can you talk a little bit about going into this journey? I know I'm going to be putting words in your mouth, but I'm pretty sure like everyone needs to learn about this, because what I find is as we start this journey, including myself and for my clients, and I'm not going to speak for your clients, but you can share, please, is unraveling the negative word trash around judgment about how we're living our life in the first place, and what that looks like in order to truly step into personal power and understanding who we are, who we want to be, and who we choose to be.
Right. Yeah, that's really valuable to look at. So many of us get in the trap of self-criticism and judgment or comparison, comparing what we want, what we have to, what we see other people have. And it's this beautiful filtered picture on Instagram of the, most wonderful relationship, and they're traveling the world, right? But we have to understand that you're not seeing everything behind the scenes, and you're not seeing what it takes to get there either. You're seeing an end result. So comparison can often drive us to that self-criticism where we feel like we're not good enough, right? Or, when we feel like we're trying to work towards something and that, imposter syndrome steps in and we start getting, very critical, and we start thinking we're not good enough. Or we've been in past relationships where we've been told we're not good enough, right? So all of these, words and narratives, they weave into the tapestry of who we feel like we are. And I think where we first need to start is by going ahead and looking at that. I think so many people remain stuck and remain lost because it's a scary process to really get honest with yourself about who you feel that you really are and what your life entails, right? Just really getting honest with the inventory. So let's take a look at those negative whispers we hear in our own narratives, right? The self-criticism, the judgment. And let's go ahead and put it all down and sort through it. Let's start by going, is any of this actually true, right? Because most of the time we're going to find that it's not, right? We're going to find that we're overly critical. Everybody makes mistakes. There's not a person on the planet that doesn't come across challenges, that doesn't make maybe a quote unquote wrong decision. But as you've pointed out, they'll eventually lead us to where we need to go if we choose to learn from it. So understand that nobody is perfect. Everybody is going to make mistakes. It is the clear point of why we're here in this human experience, is to learn and grow from what we're encountering. So throw it all out there. Take a look. All of those judgments, is any of it true? When you're saying, oh, I'm not good enough, I have to lose some weight, I have to do this, or if I could only make more money, then maybe I could attract a better partner, or, whatever the story is, we're going to find that these are just things that we're telling ourselves that aren't actually true. And if we just start looking deep within ourselves at what fills our heart, who we really are, what lights us up, that is like a North Star to finding your direction and finding, calling in all of the things that you really want in life. And so when we're looking at these negative stories, the longer we allow ourselves to remain in that space, the deeper rooted those neurological pathways are going to become. And so when you're telling yourself or you're hearing these negative stories in your mind over and over and over, that pathway becomes so deeply rooted that that is the fastest one. And that's the one that your brain is going to take for your answers to any situation. And you can think of it as if you're walking through the woods, right? and there's a trail that somebody's walked before you many times. And the more you walk that trail, the clearer it becomes and the easier and faster it is to walk through that. That's what happens with any repetitive thoughts that we have. So just as we can create these by kind of staying stuck and repeating the negative judgments or the negative narratives, we can recreate positive narratives in the same fashion. But we have to understand and have a little patience that the first time we walk that new path, it's going to be a little difficult. It's not going to be so quick. It's going to take a little more effort. It's going to take, hey, I need to like trim these branches so I can get through here. And we have to understand that and have a little bit of patience and grace for that process. But the more we drive towards that new positive path, the quicker that will become in the future. And that will then become our default one, because the negative one that we're not using is going to grow in. And we're not going to want to go that way anymore. And so hypnotherapy can also be a quicker way to produce these newer pathways, in much the same way. And I can get really technical, but essentially it's by going deeper into the subconscious, using your brain pattern in a different way to get to the unconscious, and therefore make faster progress in creating these new pathways.
Wow, Melissa, the visual metaphor you just gave us, I absolutely love it. Around, like, we've all seen, what a path looks like, where sometimes where you're quote unquote not supposed to be walking, but we see the little dirt path because it's people use the path of least resistance, right? So the straight, what is it? The closest distance between point A and point B is a straight line. So if you have to go around that, and even if that's a sidewalk, a paved sidewalk, paved sidewalk, people are going to use a little dirt path. And if you're in the forest, of course, you're going to want to go down that trail because it seems easier, but maybe that trail is leading you towards, the beast's castle, right? To use Beauty and the Beast reference. But in order to get to the life that you actually want, you're going to have to clear your own path. And maybe there's some thorns through there, but you know that you need to go through there because there's something on the other side that is meant for you. And you're so right. We have so much resistance towards going there because in the beginning, it's going to be a little bit more difficult, but eventually that will become the path of least resistance as well. But we need to start somewhere. We need to start there. That is, I love that visual reference. And I'm gonna take us a little bit into the power of doing this work and what it means to take accountability for our mistakes. Because the number one thing that I see for my clients and for myself is no healing can take place, no transformational change could take place until there was accountability. Right? So this isn't blame, and it's not about blaming others, not about blaming yourself. That doesn't help, but it is about accountability of like, hey, I'm aware of this now. Now what do I do? To your point around course correction. And Melissa, is it okay if I share about our first interaction, like our email exchange and what?
Absolutely. Yes.
Because I think this is such a perfect example of that, because I wouldn't have done this early on in my 20s, or maybe even just like 10 years ago. I would have been so embarrassed. So everyone listening, Melissa said that we all make mistakes. Yes, we do, including Emmy, all the time. Okay, this is part of the human experience. Here's what happened. Okay, Melissa and I were scheduled for a week or two ago. I don't remember exactly, but I had to do a last minute travel. So in order to do that, I canceled our session and sent an email thinking everything's all fine and dandy. And I went off on my adventure, and I get this email from Melissa saying, hey, Emmy, I saw that our session was canceled. Can you tell me a little bit more? I don't know why it was canceled. Is there a reschedule link? And I saw that email, and there was this immediate, like, wait, what? Like, I emailed her, like this, like, panic, right? And I realized, oh my goodness, we sent the email to the wrong Melissa. So for the other Melissa who got the email, I apologize. It had nothing to do with you. And I have no idea where the other email went. So luckily, this Melissa Z. White, had her phone number in the email. I would have responded either way, but I called her and I said, is this Melissa? She said, yes, this is Emmy, the host of Confessions of a Loveaholic. I wanted to apologize to you because we made a mistake. we sent an email thinking it was you, but we actually sent it to someone else. And I apologize. Your time is valuable and precious, and so is ours. And this is not normal. How can we reschedule? And the reason I bring that story up is not to say, oh my God, Emmy did such a good job. No, not about that. This is because I am proud of myself for having the courage to call her and apologize instead of wanting to hide and disappear, because that recognition of accountability created a higher level of respect for us. And it moves us forward for like me and my brain recognizing I am strong or I am powerful, and doesn't matter what mistakes happen, I can course correct. So I'm gonna pause there because I want to hear Melissa's side. We actually haven't talked about this. So this is we're doing this live right now. So I want to hear your side on this and how you would describe that to your clients and patients, if at all.
Right. Well, I think there's kind of a few points to touch on with this example. Yes, when I got the cancellation in my calendar, I was quite confused, and I thought maybe, I had missed a message or something, and I even went back to look for it and saw that there was nothing. So I'm like, okay, there's no reason. Are we just not going to do this, or are we going to reschedule? I'm confused, and I wanted to reach out. And so I want to use this point also to talk about some personal growth, because you talked about when you were younger or earlier on in your career, you might not have felt comfortable to just kind of like show up and say, oh my God, this was a mistake. So sorry. Let's, figure out how to make it right and, course correct. Right. And I think so many of us, when we're younger or when we're feeling more insecure, and that can be at any stage in any area, it's really not about age, that we might not feel so empowered, right? And so I think if I were 20 years younger, I might have looked at that and gone, oh my gosh, she canceled me. And maybe insecurity would come in and be like, well, what's wrong? Does she not want me on the show now? And I would have gotten in my own head with my own insecurity stories, and then probably never sent the email to you asking for clarity. Where, here now, a lot more secure in who I am and understanding my value and my worth. And like, hey, just want an explanation, what's going on. Let's figure this out. And so I think both of us were coming from a place where we recognized who we may have been years ago. And in that moment, this example is sort of beautiful because I think in many ways on both sides of the fence, it's showed us our own growth. But then also what I want to point out is this is such like a somewhat kind of trivial example, but it exemplifies the key to communication in relationships. So many times we get confused by something that happens in a relationship where we're unclear, we make assumptions, our insecurities feed these stories we're telling ourselves in the head, and then we don't really empower ourselves to show up and say, hey, what's going on? Or, hey, I'm sorry I goofed up here. I didn't mean it that way. Let's make it right. And those conversations don't happen in relationships. And then you see the deterioration of a relationship over something small. Could be big, but often it's over small things, right? And so I think if we had been in a different place, or we were back in, 20 years earlier, right, in more of our insecurities, a little bit, less assured of ourselves, we could have allowed that communication to just degrade. I may have never reached out to you. You may never have felt comfortable apologizing, and this never would have happened. But here we are going, hey, I know who I am. And you know what? Yeah, everyone makes mistakes. This was just an oversight. Let me apologize. And, here we're back on track and everything's completely fine. I understand. Accidents happen. Things happen. I have a busy life too. I get it.
And I appreciate your graciousness with how kind you were in your response, and the fact that you reached out and the clarity, and you're spot on. This is actually why I wanted to bring up this example, because so often people want to go into conversations around romantic relationships and only want to go into the deep stuff. And the thing is, the deterioration happens with a lot of trivial things. And this is an example around assumptions that could have been made. I could have called her and been super rude and been like, well, what do you mean? I was busy. I had to cancel. Do you want to reschedule? Like that wouldn't have felt good for either one of us. And for those of you, like, this is going to be controversial. We have gone on this very dangerous road of like women shouldn't apologize for anything at all, and that's not true. I just told you that I called, and the first thing I told Melissa is I want to apologize. So it is contextual, okay? That's all I'm going to say here for that, because I want to go into another topic, but it is contextual. This is not about like, yes, don't say sorry when you don't need to. Like if you're at a ballpark and you need to move seats or whatever, you can say excuse me, okay? I'm going to pause there. Excuse me versus I'm sorry. But in this situation, did Melissa need an apology? Yes. Was it my responsibility to give it? Yes. Could I have ignored it and both of us ghosted each other? Yes. And that would have created some icky energy. And that's not who we are. So this is us taking personal power, because how we act for our personal lives will reflect in how we take this in our romantic lives. And on that note, this is why I want to switch over, because I want to hear Melissa's opinion on this. Melissa, when you're doing your work with your clients and they're specifically working on their romantic relationships, what is the most common relationship struggle you see and why?
One of the most common, well, usually when the clients come to me, it's at a state in their relationship where I tend to get approached by one of the partners saying, I don't know if I should stay or if I should go. And here's the situation, right? And it's fascinating that I think so many people allow their relationship to progress to that state before coming and seeking some guidance or help or coaching, right? But nonetheless, it's when they generally come to see me. And as we pick through the situation and I get more background and, gain more understanding of what the dynamics are, why they feel that way, usually what I find is one of two things. More often than not, it's a collection of trivial events that went unaddressed, undiscussed, and it piled up, and it allowed the individual who's seeking help to feel really, really unpleasant, right? Because not only did these trivial incidents happen and not get addressed, but they chose to not address it in the time. So now they're feeling like their confidence in their power is going away. They're feeling less powerful within themselves. And, they start to, again, start feeding those negative pathways, that they work so hard to get out of. And they start going down those old paths of, well, what's wrong with me? Why is my partner treating me this way? Or, whatever. I mean, and there's so many examples of things that occur in relationships, but I would say one of the fundamental issues is communication and lack thereof. Healthy relationships are not created on lack of communication. They are created on the willingness of both partners to accept their accountability, be clear on who they are, and show up and be willing to have uncomfortable conversations. And the more that's practiced, honestly, they don't have to be super uncomfortable, because the more you practice those communications, the better your skills become at learning how to express what you're feeling and how to receive what your partner's feeling, and figure out exactly how you're both perceiving it and what the truth of the situation is and how to move forward through it. And that process becomes so much quicker and so much easier the more you practice those skills. So I would say communication is a huge factor in the deterioration of relationships. And then, I mean, on the other side, there are sometimes that the relationship really is just an unhealthy pairing, and that's a whole different situation though. But for two healthy individuals that are just struggling through normal, typical relationship challenges, almost always at the helm is lack of communication.
I love this, Melissa. And we can talk about just this topic of like whether it's healthy or unhealthy, like probably for 5 days straight and never be done. Right, Melissa?
Right. Right. We can
Like,
unpack relationships forever.
exactly. Like that, even just that, like we would never be done. Do you have any tips, and not hacks, because I don't believe in hacks when it comes to relationship stuff. Do you have any sort of filtration or qualification for people to start filtering through what does it mean to have healthy communication from their partner? And let's just say for most of my listeners are women, specifically from a man, right? How do they start deciphering? Sometimes it's very confusing. Like, is what he is doing and saying healthy or unhealthy, or are we just not do we just not know how to communicate properly? What should she be hearing from her partner? And this might be too vague, but I know you have certain examples. So wherever you want to take us with this would be super helpful for the audience.
Sure. So I would say the first place to start filtering things through is taking a look at the level of respect that you and your partner both have for each other. Are your communications coming from a place of true love and respect and care, or are they coming from attacks? Another place that relationships tend to go wrong is it's easy in the beginning of the relationship. You're caught up in all the, all of the feel good hormones that are pumping through your brain, and you're feeling amazing and you're getting dopamine bursts all the time and everything's great. So it's really easy to feel good about it. But once that dissipates and you start dealing with the day-to-day challenges, right? It's much more challenging for us to understand that this is a partnership, right? Day-to-day life challenges come in, we're exhausted, maybe there's kids involved, you're looking after the kids, there's careers that we're feeding, all of these external things. And by the time we get together, at the end of the day, and we come home to each other, we're exhausted, we're drained, our willpower's tapped out, and we start, we're not performing our best, right? And so it's easy in those moments to forget that we are a respectful partnership and that we decided to enter in this to show up and help each other become our best and our best together. And so that's when subtle attacks start happening, because one person is getting resentful. They're maybe feeling like they're carrying more of the load than the other one. And then it's like, well, you're not doing as much, or if you could just, do XYZ, that would be helpful. And we start barking at each other. So I think when these things start to happen, or to catch ourselves before we allow them to progress too far or allow them to happen, is to remember, I chose this partner. These are the things I love about this individual. And I am consciously choosing to be a partner. So that means I'm showing up for this person. And when I speak to them, I want to speak to them in a way that is helpful, not attacking, not belittling, not tearing down. I am not in competition with my partner. We are taking on the world together to try to be our best, right? But it's also key that when we're receiving information from our partners, right? And we're hearing things, especially when they're things that aren't so easy to hear. And at first, if we're in our emotions, it can feel like, oh, this person is saying these nasty things, like how uncalled for. But I think what we need to do in those moments, and what I try to do when that comes up, because when you're dealing with relationship dynamics, you're going to have these issues, right? And I think one of the keys is to step back, step out of your emotions as much as you can, appreciate that you're feeling emotions that are triggered, figure out what they are, figure out why you're feeling that way. Is it really about what your partner just said to you, or is that triggering something else and you're really answering to that old wound and not what your partner said? And then look at it and be like, okay, if my partner is coming to me from a place of love and respect, and he wants to see me be my best, and he wants me to be my best partner to him, then he must be saying this with good intentions. So is there truth in what he's saying? Can I extract? Is he really trying to give me feedback and maybe just not saying it the best way? Well, yeah, you know what? Maybe I could work on XYZ a little more. There really is something to that. And instead of feeling attacked by it, understand that this person who cares about us is trying to offer help in us getting to the next level of who we can show up to be.
I love that, Melissa. And obviously, for those of you listening, there are a lot of nuances, there are a lot of details that go into this. And that's why it's so important to work with experts like Melissa in order to get the proper guidance and understand and decipher what's going on in your head and what you're experiencing. Because for those of us who have experienced toxic relationships, you might be thinking that his behavior is out of love, but it's actually manipulation and abuse. So, this is why you need an expert outside's opinion and not just your friends or people who love you. Sometimes they might give you some insights, but sometimes they might give you the wrong insights. And that's why Melissa and I are so passionate in doing this level of work, because everyone deserves to live the best life for themselves, whether it's in partnership with who they currently are or choosing to dissolve that partnership and moving on to really stepping into their personal power. Melissa, any final words for our listeners today?
Just to sort of touch on what you just said, I think it's really key for people to be open-minded and to normalize seeking help in these areas and seeking experts. For individuals like you and I and many others who are in this, industry, we work in interpersonal relationships all the time. So we have seen patterns over and over and over show up in different situations in different ways with different people. And we know what that looks like, and it's much more easier for us to identify that. So seeking the help of a professional, like you said, as opposed to just a friend or, someone else, like we have seen these dynamics show up time and time again and can help you to sort through if it really is a toxic situation that you need to consider changing or leaving, or if it is just miscommunication, mixed signals, just that you need clarity on, and you both need to be guided how to navigate those waters, in a different way than what you're doing, so you can get out of your unhealthy patterns. There's a big difference between an unhealthy pattern and a toxic relationship. And seeking the help and guidance of experts who work in this realm day in and day out can really help you gain clarity on which that is.
1000%. Thank you so much, Melissa. Melissa, what is the best way for people to contact you after they hear your wonderful insights?
Thank you. Yes. I just want to first say thank you so much for having me on the show. It's been a blast engaging in this conversation. I love talking about relationships, and it's just been really fun to share that with you and your audience. So thank you so much for having me here.
Thank
And
you.
anybody who's looking to find me and learn more about what I do or reach out and chat with me, you can find all of my information on my website at www.melissazwhite.com. So I have all of my links, all of my services, programs, everything's there. So that's the best place to start when you want to reach out to me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Melissa, for being on our show. We absolutely loved having you. Remember, everyone, you deserve safe love. I love you all. We'll see you on the next episode.